Okay. I think, yep, looks like we're streaming 5x5. Hope everyone can hear us out there. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Glad to hear we are in the pipe 5x5. Name that
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, yeah, here we are, episode 49, almost done the year. Oddly enough,
49.
the very first
Man.
episode that we did was on the 7th in January, which was a Saturday, and here we are December 7th, another Saturday.
Man. I
12
can't believe it's
months.
been a year. That's great, dude. That's great.
Pretty close. It's been fantastic, and haven't missed a week yet, which is not too shabby for a first time show. And yeah, we got we got a script tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, we got a script. Yes. Oh,
So
oof.
last week was this Thanksgiving for you. So how was your Thanksgiving, man?
It was good. It was really good. Went to Salt Lake and had it with some family, and it was cold, but not terribly so. And yeah, ate too much, and you know how it is when you're with family. Like you get just enough, and then you're ready to go home. Can I say that? I just said that. Yes, that's exactly what it was like. Um, so yeah, it was good. It was good. Looking forward to Christmas. I love all the Christmas lights. Took the dog around town last night. We drove through a couple neighborhoods and looked at Christmas lights. That was fun. Just let him stick his head out the window. He freezes us out, but we love him so much that we don't care. You know, loves to stick his head out the window. Um, so yeah, this time of year is always good. What about up there? You guys do Christmas lights, right? You're not
Well,
anti-Christmas
we
in Canada.
because our Thanksgiving, which is in line with the harvest, is in early October. As soon as like Halloween's over, we have full permission to start doing the Christmas stuff in November because we don't have a holiday really in between. The closest thing we have is our Remembrance Day, which is like Memorial Day or Veterans Day, whichever one you guys have. So we don't have the like our Thanksgiving, which Canada used to have Thanksgiving actually in November. Back in the late 1500s is when we started ours. And then the reason we moved it to October is, well, number one, to be more in line with the harvest, and number two, because we did the Day of Remembrance, which would be November 11th, and we didn't want to have those two holidays so close to each other. So that's why we moved it up, and that was after the First World War. So yeah,
Oh wow.
so that made things a lot easier for us. But you guys down in the South, you're like, no, we'll start the month with the Day of Remembrance, and then we'll end it with fighting each other in shopping malls over deals.
Script doctor. More than just a script writer. He's a historian.
That's one of the well, that's one of the things you got to do as a screenwriter. You got to do your research on things, and this would be one of the scripts where I would give that advice to the writer. So
This script, my advice would be to everyone who reads it to do the opposite. You want to forget it as quickly as possible.
spoilers. All right, let's get into tonight's show.
Oh, here we go.
Welcome to
Buckle
Scripts on
up.
Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week, back again, is TJ Mack from Mac Media. Glad to have you back here, buddy. This
It's
this
always
week's
fun.
this week's script this week's script is actually going to be very educational with regards to what you should write, why you should write it, and why a superficial approach to the subject matter is never going to be your benefit. That's one of the things that we can learn from today. So this week's script,
I
yeah,
have so much to add to that I hate to overuse the word literally. I hate when people do this, but I
you're gonna go
literally
Rob
don't
Lowe
even
on
know.
me.
I don't even know where to start, dude. I don't even know where to start. Like, there's so many things I hate about this script. Um, and I'll sum it up with this: that do you still have your Discord up? The DM I sent you right before I jumped on with you.
Yeah,
What did I say?
I've got the.
Will you
DM.
read that for the audience, please?
Okay, let me just grab
It'll be
that.
better coming from you.
Okay. Words can't accurately describe how much I hate this script. That's that's what you sent me earlier today.
That's what I sent you. I'm like, I was mad at you for like 15 minutes. I'm like, I had to read this.
I didn't
because
write
again,
it.
mother effer. Why did I have to read this script? So yeah, there's no spoilers here. I'm not hiding it. You told me I didn't have to. Like,
Nope,
guys,
no,
I
you don't
hated
have
this
to.
script. I hated it.
Well, let's get
let's
into it
jump
so that
in.
the audience knows, people listening know what we're talking about.
Yes,
So
let's go.
we're
Let's go.
reviewing the script called Our House, which is from the 2023 Blacklist. This script finished number 30, with 12 votes, and it's written by Will Youmans. I don't know if that's his real last name because it's literally like Youmans. It sounds like how Ferengi says humans.
That's exactly what I thought. Humans from Futurama, the alien. You humans will be eaten.
Yeah,
That's what it makes me think of.
Now,
dude.
oddly enough, like this guy here, he is a writer, producer, actor. He does all these things here. I don't know how he is, but he must know someone very important because he is repped by CAA, which is like the top screenwriting.
Is he good at any of those roles? Curious. If
I have no idea because I've never heard of any of the things he's done. He's been around since 2018.
Okay.
So he's fairly fresh to it. I will say this: he does have a strong voice when it comes to his writing. I'm just not really won over. He seems like the type of guy who played into a certain deck that worked well for the business at this time. So logline.
Wait. Is it a shorter version, a shorter way of describing that? It's just the word hack. He's a hack.
I wouldn't call him a hack. I would say that he's a writer that has potential, but he used a different skill set to get where he is.
So he's a whore.
Well, I mean, listen, almost everybody in Hollywood is a whore at some varying degrees. Like, even I have to, like, do stuff I don't want to do. Luckily, it's not physical or sexual, but it's like, I gotta listen.
When's that LA trip happening again, Script?
Pretty soon,
right?
Yeah, like, yes, I'll have to be in a room with someone I despise and not bitch at them right away, but, you know.
Accurate protection. And I mean that at every level of the word.
But the log line for our house, and this is actually this is not his log line because he didn't write one. He wrote a synopsis and called it a log line. That's your first red flag. The log line for this one here is: during a Capitol riot, a college student is ensnared by an eccentric congresswoman intent on crashing a clandestine gathering of the world's elite, revealing a web of dark secrets and survival. So, Mac, please share with us the synopsis that this writer thought was a log line.
All right, here we go. When she wins an essay competition, Leela, is it Leela or Layla? How are you?
Leela, Lila, Lola.
Eric Clapton, insert here. Layla Mosley is brought to Capitol Hill to be honored by the United States Congress, but her luck runs out when the ceremony intersects with a violent insurrection, and she must team up with a group of aides, interns, and Nepo babies to battle for survival against a legion of protesters and a secret society.
That's right. So,
wow.
Now, fortunately for you and I, this is only a 98-page script. So
God, I got 10 pages deep when I saw 99. I was like, Jesus, really that long?
I will say this. My first impression is that as I was reading this, it had a couple of points that made me go, okay, that's kind of funny. But for the most part, my eyes were, I was falling asleep reading this. Like, it's kind of boring. I'm sorry, to Will there. Dude, I was like fighting to stay awake reading this script.
So I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't bored. I was just annoyed the whole time. I was just annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even think of a good analogy. Like it's like I felt like I was waiting in a dentist office with 3 crying babies. A door with no external, no extra door, so every time the door opens, just cold air comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just hits you. You're never quite comfortable. There's no good magazines. The lady at the front desk has an annoying voice, and you're
Constantly
supposed to be in
phone.
an hour ago. And you're still waiting, right? And so it was just like all of that. I just felt like all of this like chaos and buzziness, and I just didn't want to be here. I didn't, and that's the first for me. Just so, I mean, obviously we've done this enough times together, like 7 or 8 times. That's not my pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very I go in straight open minded, like let's go. What is this? What do you got for me? And this just annoyed me very quickly. And so yeah, and even the opening scene was a little confusing. Like I get it, you want to hook. So I don't know if you want to jump into that yet.
No, let's jump into that because that opening is basically this old guy runs an apiary, which is a beehive. However, a bee farm. However, the writer doesn't call it an apiary; he just calls it a bee farm. And he's tending to his bees, and it's all like happy, pleasant, what have you. And then as he goes to one of the farms, something bursts in there. That's red smoke, and then all the bees just sting the guy to death. And I'm just like, well, interesting. And then we crash cut. We crash cut to
Wait, but let's just stop.
Go
Just
ahead.
stop for
Go
a
ahead.
second. That was one page. And the biggest thing that stood out to me in that one page was we went to great detail to describe he's wearing his protective bee suit. I don't know the legitimate professional terms for that, but he's got the helmet, he's got the gloves, he's got everything, right? Then he stops and eats his sandwich, and a bee, at which point this friendly little bee comes over. I'm sure it had Seinfeld's voice and was like, "Hello, you have such a nice smelling sandwich." And then it flies off all friendly, like, and then the next thing we know, he's back at work, he's smoking a box, and then he peers in, this red smoke comes out, and he dies, right?
Yep.
And and then it says all these bees attacked him and stung him. We find out later it was like what, 2,600 times or something. It was a lot.
It was 2,600. 2,600 bee stings.
Okay.
And here's something that's also funny. The writer, I had to reread this twice because I didn't know if the writer was doing it as a joke or if he was actually just confused.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say. Say it. Say it.
So, honeybees have stingers that have edges in them that cause them to that when they sting you, they die because when they pull the stinger out, it also removes out their abdomen and part of their stomach. Bumblebees don't have that, so bumblebees can sting you multiple times and not die. And there's a line in there where the congresswoman is correct. She says, yes, 2,601 people one deaths occurred from that tragic accident. And the main character, who's named Layla, says, "You're confusing honeybees with bumblebees." And I slapped my head. I'm like, no, you made the antagonist character is right, the protagonist is wrong. This guy did not. If this guy did so much quote unquote research with regards to doing an opening scene about a bee farmer, and he doesn't know the difference between honeybees and bumblebees.
But what's the greater sin? The fact that the writer didn't spend 3 seconds Googling it, or the fact that he has our protagonist respond in a way about a topic that doesn't freaking matter at all. It's such a waste of time on screen, right? Like, oh, dude, it was okay.
Well, the thing is, his intention was to try and make. So the writer's intention clearly was to try and make the congresswoman supposed to be the dumb one here, and the main character is supposed to be the smarter one. But when, again, this comes down to another very important rule, one of my favorites. You're only as smart as your characters are only as smart as you are. And if you do something that conveys something stupid like this, it's going to have a ripple effect on anyone reading your script and anyone producing it, if they happen to know. And here's the other part too. Not everybody on the world is going to know the difference between honeybees and bumblebees and all that type of stuff. I do, just because I grew up near a lot of beehives in my small hometown.
I grew up in the country in Idaho. I stepped on multiple bees and got stung. Like, yeah. So
and you know which ones are like, hey, wait a minute, that one's stinging me again. And you're like, that's not, and that freaks you out.
Yeah, playing barefoot, you learn a lot about bees in the country, for sure.
Yes.
But what bugged me is, like, your point is 100% valid. But my point I'm trying to make is, who cares? That dialogue was stupid anyway. It does nothing for me as a viewer to be like, I want to see these two get into a pissing contest on who's smarter, right? But hold on, we've like gone way off the reservation already. My point was that this guy in the opening scene was wearing all of his bee protective gear. He puts his hat back on to go back and finish working on the bees. He then gets hit in the face with some gas, and then it's described as all these bees are stinging him. But unless on his way to collapsing after getting hit in the face with the red gas, he took his clothes off, these bees still couldn't sting him. So it was
They
stupid.
shouldn't be able to sting him. Yeah.
It was a very obvious oversight in your opening scene. And to me, your opening scene, especially if it's a hook opening scene, you got to have it perfect. The pacing has to be good. The description has to be good. You have to get that audience in that opening scene and be like, what is going to happen next, right? And to me, I was just like, okay, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of mystery there. Like, why was there red gas? Where'd that come from?
Well,
that
the other
was my
part
mystery.
too is, what if that? And this would be us like really helping out the writers, that you have to make the red gas also an acid that eats away the suit, because then you're like, oh my god, and then it's not enough that he's getting the burns. It's like now he's getting all the bees. So then you have your Nicolas Cage moment, right, where he's like, the bees, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So at least it would have made. That's what I mean. It just needed a couple more rewrites, a little more polish, right? Like, it just wasn't there. And I was like, okay, well, no judgment yet. I read that first page, and I'm like, okay, we got a mystery, something's going on. Felt a little off, but let's keep going. And so then we jump into Greyhound bus time, which I think is another interesting setting.
Mm-hmm.
I love the beginning of I can't think of it. What the heck was that rock musical with Tom Cruise and everybody, and Remember he played like Tommy Lee, and it was a whole rock musical, a rock anthem musical, and it
Oh
had
yeah, Rock of Ages, right?
Rock of Ages. Yeah, it had
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin. Yeah, that one. That was like, the opening was with the bus and stuff, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with a bus opening scene. It's tight. There's a lot that could happen right there. And we're introduced to our protagonist. Here we go. Do you want to do intros, or should I keep? Do you want me to
So
do it?
our intro is Lila Mosley. She's 20, kind of prim proper. We get a sense that she wants to be a politician or at least work in government, and she's fretting over the speech that she's giving because so she's won this essay, an
Yes.
essay contest. And her essay is going to be entered into the Library of Congress, and it's a very important thing of hers, something that she really wants to do. And this is also her first time going to the Capitol, and we find out that she's from Florida. And there's one joke here, which is that, which is done by one of the patrons on the bus, whose name is Molly. She's encouraging to Lila, and she's like saying, you keep your strength up. Here's a free candy, any energy bar type thing. Oh, and
Did you think that was weird? I thought that was weird. Like, would you take an energy bar from a stranger on a Greyhound bus or even a plane? Like, would you do that?
I would take it. I wouldn't eat it. I would just dispose of it because
Yeah,
I'd be
you don't know
polite.
you don't know what it is.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know what they
okay.
did to it. But you be polite, and then you just like, I'm gonna save this for later, and then you just discreetly wedge it into the seat or put it into a trash bin
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, so we come in. The camera, like, we start on the bus driver. He's driving, and then we hear some noise in the background. So he puts on some headphones, which I think is illegal as a bus driver, but that's okay.
Yes.
It's a movie. And then we get to the detail of, like, he's listening to Ellie Goulding's "Love Me Like You Do," which I'm like, that's very specific. Why? I mean, who cares? But whatever. And then she's FaceTiming her mom and dad and her little sister, who's just a typical teenage sister who just is completely apathetic, doesn't care, right, about any of it. And so, yeah, this is a big deal. It's basically establishing, hey, she won this contest. It's a big deal to her. She wants to go into politics, which instantly I hated her. I'm like, oh, great. It's a politics thing, Didn't hate her, but you know what I'm saying. I'm like, ugh, here we go.
Yes.
Yeah. So then she gets off the bus, and yeah, you're so good. See that you just skipped over all that, and you just cut to them getting off the bus. But yeah, so here we have Layla. Are we gonna say Layla? I want to make sure we split out.
Yeah,
the
let's
same
go
way.
with Layla. Like Layla,
Okay.
she's worried about. She has a FaceTime conversation with her folks. Her dad is actually kind of encouraging, and her mom is a little manipulative. We get
Yeah,
pretty quickly. We find
I
out
was getting
that
the I was getting the BFF vibe from her mom, right? She's more
yeah,
of a friend mom instead of a mom. But yeah, at this point, I feel like the writing's fine, the dialogue's good. I'm not complaining about anything at this
yeah.
point.
We also get the fact like she's a fairly. I mean, she's supposed to be a fairly accomplished college student, which is interesting because I was unaware that they'd be like, wouldn't these types of essay writing contests be done for like high school?
That's what I would assume, but I have zero interest in this world at all, so I have no
Because
idea.
that's one like again, I'm not a part of the United States education system, so I don't know those prospects there. So that one was a little weird for me.
Yeah.
But what's kind of funny is that so Molly, before they get off the bus, she says, when you're wandering around DC, don't let anyone know you're from Florida. They hate you here. And I'm like, that's a funny joke.
Yeah, because it's probably accurate to some degree, but it's funny.
Yeah. And I figured, okay, that's great. And then what we have here is we get introduced to Robbie. And Robbie is, I guess he's part of Secret Service or something. But he finds out last minute that he's the driver to take her to see a congresswoman whose name's Sydney Ahern. So he's this guy that
Also known as Sydney A-hole to her friend.
Sydney A-hole to her friends, pretty much. And so
God.
Robbie is this type of guy who he
Pulls
claims
up in a Saturn. There's
pulls-
something about that too that just cracked me up. I'm like,
yeah, he
a
pulls up
Saturn,
in like
bar-
a sedan that's like a beat up old Saturn.
an old Saturn, which if you've ever, Saturns are very like, I don't know, they were dependable, but man, they're just in this weird like bookmark of American history vehicles. Like
They haven't been
okay.
around in nearly 30 years, have they?
No. They only lasted, I think. Someone should look it up. I think 8 years or something. They didn't last very
It was
long.
short. The only thing I remember vividly about a Saturn is they had this one commercial where there was a deaf person signing the commercial during it, and then she came up with like the new sign language for buying a Saturn, And I'm like, that is so weird.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it was a GM product that just I don't know what led to its failure, but it happens. It's very common with legacy dealers. I mean, like Scion was Toyota's like hip American brand that was just a Toyota. They just rebranded it.
But I mean, they bring in the old Saturn here because I think this is a joke with regards to like government resources, right? So sometimes you have like, oh, the politicians have great things, they have motorcade stuff, but then you always have that one set where they just give them all the old, like the hand-me-downs of crap.
Holy crap! In the chat, Saturn was around for 25 years. Really, that surprises me. I only remember it for like less than a decade. 85 to 2010. That's crazy.
So between the time we got our license to the time it died, is that when we knew what a Saturn was?
Yeah, and my girlfriend had one. She loved it. It was a great car for her. But they're very distinct. Like I could spot a Saturn like a mile away because they just had this. They only had a few models, but they were just very, very distinct. Anyway, sorry, that's my random brain at work. But yeah, so we're in DC. We've established at this point. We've already established this is the thing that already instantly rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, okay, so what was her name, Molly or whatever, the lady that gave her the energy bar she was very kind and polite, but it was also kind of like, oh, she's a redneck, right? Like I got that vibe right away from how she was written, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
See,
so
I got the vibe
whatever.
with regards to how she was written, but I noticed that Layla didn't judge her, and that kind of that's made me like, oh, okay, cool. So this is not that type of thing right now. And actually, that's one
it's
of the
not
things
propaganda yet.
Well, that's one of the things that's kind of a little bit consistent with her is that because we learned that Layla is fine with regular people. It's politicians she has an issue with, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Which was weird. Like her character, we'll get into that. We have specific situations coming up, but I agree. She kind of surprised me in a few situations, and I was actually happy generally with where the story ended with her character arc, but also it was a very boring arc at the same time, even though it shouldn't have been. On paper, it sounds like it should have been an exciting. This whole thing should have been an exciting romp.
This should have been a very. This had the potential to be a brilliant comedy based on the three character dynamics we get here, and but
it wasn't. It was supposed to be serious. It was supposed to be serious, and I agree.
It was treated too seriously. Yeah,
it could have been very easily a comedy. Like this could have been like something that would have came out in the late '80s. Could have been hilarious. Anyway. So where were we at?
She gets driven to Congress, and she gets to finally meet Sydney. And Sydney's got her kind of entourage around here, and one of the members of her entourage is Ariana, who's her daughter. And Ariana is actually like the most normal of the characters, kind of in the script. She's very nice and polite. She doesn't care about the politics of anything going around. She admires Layla for the essay that she wrote, and the essay that she wrote was actually about losing her grandfather. And it was so well written that's why they're entering it into the Library of Congress out of all the other ones that were about superhuman feats that may or may not be provable. They try to do this running joke where they confuse her essay with someone that rescued cats in Afghanistan or something like that.
Syrian cat sanctuary, and which was funny. I thought that bit was good. It was good.
I was like, that's interesting, but it's so off. I mean, it would have been interesting if they said, "Oh, yeah, it's because the first name of the person that won that was also named Lila, but it wasn't Mosley."
No,
or something.
I mean, that's fine, but I think it's fine the way it is because it shows you like how superficial these assholes are in DC, right? They're like, we don't even know who you are. We did so many. We thought yours was the one, and it was the rule of three. Took place here, right?
Yep.
Ariana was the third one, and she actually was the one that got it right. She's like, "Oh, don't you mean the cat sanctuary?" And she's like, "Ariana's no, the one about your grandfather. It moved me to tears." And I was like, "Okay, that was funny. We used the rule of three properly." And it shows the superficiality that these people really they're supposedly loved it so much, and they confuse it with the wrong one. So how much did they really love it? Right.
Well, this also tells you the one that they remember is not the one that won.
Yes, yes. It's like American Idol. The person with the best career always comes in second place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so I thought that I was okay with that part. We also meet the bodyguard, the big buff guy that was escorting Ariana to the bathroom and back. Which at first I was confused. I'm like, is Ariana like some star and she's hanging out with these people? And then I realized later, no, the bodyguard is kind of for Sydney, and then Ariana's there too. And
Ariana's a kid, so it's part of that as well. That's Damien. He doesn't speak throughout this entire script except at the very, 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 very end.
Which I don't remember even happening, but okay.
He just, yeah. Then you have Robbie, who is also kind of like security as well. Robbie's the guy who claims to know everything, but when challenged on to like prove what he knows, he's like, I don't want to say. I'm going to withhold the education so that you can learn on your own. He's that type of talker. You see a lot in Hollywood, which I think that made people. I think that made a lot of people who read this laugh a lot, because you see those types of guys in Hollywood all the time, who just, as soon as you challenge them or ask them to dig deeper with regards to a statement that they made, they close up. They don't even try. I mean, I would have at least appreciated like a BS, but like he did nothing. So we get barraged by this. But what's happening outside is that there is a protest going on. Nobody really knows what the protest is for. The Secret Service, so to speak, or the Capitol Police and the Capitol Security, all suspect it has something to do with a couple of politicians that are trying to close down an oil pipeline that's going from New York to I think Florida.
And that's when we jump into our first Wolf Blitzer, and then the other guy, the weather guy that's actually reporting for whatever reason today.
Jim Cantor, who I don't know if he's real or not, but apparently he's got some sort of staple blue blazer jacket he wears. I don't know.
But Wolf Blitzer, I know Wolf is a real guy.
Yes.
On CNN or something. So we're kind of we check back in with these guys several times throughout the script to kind of give us. It's that it's just sort of giving more information to us as a viewer of what's kind of happening from a bird's eye view. With the protest, which honestly, there's nothing to tell you really. Like, it's just, there's protests and it's basically January 6th is what I got out of this whole thing. This is like a January 6th liberal wet dream of like what happened. Oh, look what they did. They came in and we're about to tell you what happened. Like, it was so violent, so crazy. And that's not what happened at all. What was the name of our rich oil tycoon? Do you remember his name? I need to find it.
I don't remember the name of the tycoon, but the one politician that was fronting it was named Ted Kern.
Yeah, wasn't he the oil guy too?
No, he's just the politician that's lobbying for oil.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So he was lobbying for oil. Layla instantly disliked him. She knew who he was. She recognized him.
Hates his guts.
She's like, he's a monster. He's pro oil and blah, blah, blah. And then
Sydney's like, that's my friend.
Yeah. Sydney's like, that's my friend. And then Ariana's like, he's so nice. And so they, you quickly see that like everything, all this politics stuff on the surface level means nothing once they're like in a room together hanging out. Right?
Well, it's basically just saying it's a mono party.
Yeah. They're all bad. Some are worse than others, but they are all bad. And we get to the depths of the badness towards the third act. So
we do, but we also get introduced to Bruno Diaz, who is who's basically a virtue signaling politician, and he's described as the person that would release your nudes publicly and then defend you just so that they can be the hero. Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And
I just wish we got more of him, because we only get him for like a couple of scenes and then he's out of the picture for the rest of the script.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, at least they're being honest about what he is. Like we don't like him because he would release your dudes and then just to be your hero. And I'm like, okay, versus like just all the other, like that's two layers of corrupt, right?
Right.
We only put up with one layer of corruptness in our circle of politicians and friends. It just cracked me up. I'm like, y'all are hypocrites. You're all evil. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, at least there's a little bit of awareness there. We also have Layla is trying to call her, I guess it's her boyfriend named Carter, to get encouragement, but he's apparently in Dallas at a funeral for his aunt, and she's just really like, she is being disillusioned by politics very quickly, having only been in this city for like an hour or two, and we get a basic itinerary. They're just going to go to the House chamber. business is going to be conducted, and she's supposed to give a speech, which she's been very, very worried about. And she has something written that's maybe a couple pages, so it'd be about 3-4 minutes. And of course, Sydney's like, well, we don't have time for that. There's so many other things going on today. Can you summarize and rewrite your speech? And then Robbie ends up rewriting it to like 3 sentences.
Not even, no, dude, it's like 2 sentences.
It's like 2, I guess. Yeah.
It was so pathetic. She probably had like, and her talk didn't sound like it was gonna be that long, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, but they're like, it's too long. And so he gives her like 2 sentences, and it's like they describe it as like this torn off piece of paper. Like that's how small it is.
Yeah.
And she's all just deflated. She's like, oh, this is what I have to do, and it's all happening so fast. Like I think that part was written very well. The pacing is like frantic, and there's crazy all this stuff. They're like, this is our schedule. This is what we're gonna do, and then it describes them doing all this stuff, and then now we got to cut this down. There's no time. And then but then it got weird because then Ariana was like talks her into reading hers, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, so is Ariana like just the daughter, or because we don't really find out she's the daughter till later script. We don't.
Not officially. So one of the things that this script does terribly is they don't introduce the characters well and the relationship. Sometimes it'll just be like woman, and then the woman will say some lines, and then later be like, that woman from before, this is her name now. It's like, no, don't do stuff like that. They do that with Molly. Like they actually throw in her name, and then it's not until like page 30 or 40, like in that range, where they say, this is Molly, she's from the bus, and she's around 40 years old. And it's like, why didn't we get this information when she was introduced on page 2? There's no reason to hide it from us.
Yeah, that just felt weird. And so I was a little confused on Ariana's level of power, or who was she in this group? Where did she fit in? And so when she was like, she talked Layla into doing her speech, and it was kind of lame too. We can find it, but what she said to her, she's like, it was like she implied, she's like, yes, you really shouldn't do this, wink wink. And then Layla kind of picks up on it, like, oh, well, then that means I should, right?
Yeah.
And at which she does, she actually starts to read her speech, and then we see Sydney's response, and Sydney's like, oh, she's not reading the one that we gave her, she's reading her own. And then it's like, it was almost written in a way where it's like, everyone hold your breath, how is she gonna react? And then Sydney's like, good for her. She's one of us. She does what she wants to do. Yeah, you're going to be a good politician. And I was just like, eye roll, dude. I had to like get out of my chair and go pick up my eyeballs because they rolled so freaking hard.
Yeah.
I was just like, ugh. How did you feel about that part?
I was like, okay, it's a character moment, but you're kind of deflating potential conflict because, again, don't make anything easy for your main characters. So instead of having Sydney now having a little bit of a grudge against Layla for doing that, it's completely dismissed. It's done. It's resolved. It's over because only as she's giving this speech does the power go out. Her mic gets cut off. Everything gets shut down, and it turns out people of this protest have now escalated it to a riot, and they've somehow cut the power to many of the buildings in DC. And they've also now broken into the Capitol, and they're not killing anybody or shooting. No real violence. They're just kind of like taking over and overwhelming people.
I got to say this before you go too far down the
Yeah.
So when you just said the cut the power thing, in my head, I heard, was it Hicks on Alien when he's like, they cut the power, man. How do they do that? They're freaking aliens, man. Sorry, that was just in my brain. So yeah, the power goes out, and it's like, uh-oh, now we're in trouble. And this is what was weird to me, is I felt like this escalation of the riot, or the crowd, whatever you want to call it. Oh my gosh, Siri's like listening to me right now. It kind of blindsided me. I don't feel like we built up to it. Like suddenly the power's out and everyone's like terrified for their lives, right? It escalated very, very quickly. And I don't know if that's what the writer wanted to do, but to me it felt like we missed something, right? Like if I'd been watching the movie, I'd be like, did something get cut and left on the floor? Because like what just happened?
It's a lacking of tension, that's why. Because we know that there's a protest outside. We see some Capitol Police are like, okay, we're going to go to the main entrances, and we're going to try and hold them off.
We got the news clip. We got the news clip with Wolf, right?
We got the news clip with Wolf, which is fine. But the thing is that nothing that's as far as we know, there's nothing going on in Congress on this day aside from Layla's speech that would warrant intervention from the public to be upset about anything. Like we don't hear of anything of a vote regarding this pipeline, or a vote regarding jobs, or a vote regarding anything. We got nothing of that. So because there's all this ambiguity, there's now no stakes. And I think the reason the writer did this is because we find out why there's this group of protesters and now rioters here. Shortly after, we'll get to that in a moment, but I think it should have been better set up that there was some, like a red herring conflict, like really dig into this is happening here, and this is the media reporting onto why these protesters are here, and then when you reveal what it really is, you have the punchline being, not only were the politicians ignorant about what the people wanted, but so was the media, because they didn't even bother to talk to anybody about why they're there. And that's the joke, is the fact that the propaganda in itself of the media side of things, and the assumptions made by the politicians when it comes to interacting with their constituents are completely so off the base. Their fingers are so far from the pulse, it's not even on the same planet, that it makes the punchline of why they're actually there funny. But they didn't give us that setup at all.
Which would harmonize very well if we go back to our original plan and rewrote this as a comedy. That would have been great. It would have been great. But instead, it just felt like you were a kid and your babysitter's like, hey, you guys don't want to play hide and seek? Let's play hide and seek. And so like, sweet, let's play a game of hide and seek. And then suddenly, like, it turns into Die Hard 4. And you're like, whoa. That's because the lights went out, and then suddenly we hear this chanting, and it was, remember, our house. Whose house? Our house, I think is what it was. And like the crowd as they come barreling through. And like, again, I'll go back to, I feel like this was like a leftist wet dream of what January 6th, what they, in their minds, what they pictured it being like, not what it was at all, which was a tour by the police, peacefully walking around. But anyway, so yeah, I felt like this was just stupid, and I was like, okay, well, we're now, and then what do they do? One of the most cliche. Where's the most cliche place to hide?
Well, they all hid under their like, this is the one thing they were trying to. The writer was definitely trying to effectively make every single representative in there a coward and terrified.
And then who do they send to the door? So sorry, you're right. I skipped ahead.
So
to
they're all hiding and
but
peeing their pants.
On the door. They're banging on the door.
Yeah, they're banging on the door. And then, of course, the Ted Kern, who is this skeevy politician who's like pro-oil, he's kind of like on the brink of tears. Sydney whispers something to Lila and tells her to go over to talk to Ted. And she gives this inspirational speech to Ted saying, listen, these are your constituents. They'll listen to you. Just talk to them and hear them out. And he's like, yeah, you know what? That's what I should do. I should do that. And he gets up and he tells the Capitol Police, get away from the doors. I'm going to talk to them. The doors open up, and the first thing that happens is, right when he's like announcing himself to the people, is he gets stabbed through the chest with a flagpole and dies.
Again, like, holy crap, out of nowhere. Like, script. That whole situation was so dumb and so unbelievable. So Layla, this 20-year-old chick that just showed up, they've met for like 30 seconds, walks over to him as he's like in the fetal position underneath his desk, sucking his thumb, crying.
Pretty much.
She's like, hey buddy, guess what? These people are your people. They're oil people. They're going to listen to you. So you need to put on your big boy pants, stand up, wipe those tears, and you need to let them in. And when they come in, just talk to them. They're your people. They're going to listen to you. They want to talk to you. So just do that. And his response was, you're right. Well, I am a big boy. I can do this. Let's do it. Like, oh,
well, your paraphrasing is quite hysterical, but like, the actual speech is, he says to Layla first when she's forced to talk to him, but she doesn't want to say anything, is that when you're up against the wall as a leader, you will then be challenged onto what your beliefs actually are when your back's against the wall. And so she has this speech saying, like, no, the people that are coming in here, they're not zombies. They're your people. They can be reached. Tell them what you told her about principles and remind them that we're all Americans. And he's like, yeah, that's true. And that's what he's going to do. And she uses his words against him to convince him to try and stop this from escalating. But the irony here is the fact that they're not, the people that are a part of this riot are not here for any of those types of conversations. But it's also showing us that, and this is actually true of a lot of mobs, sometimes the instinct overpowers the rational. So they see something there that they don't like, or they recognize, oh, there's a politician here, and their first instinct is to do whatever the mob at that point was chanting. And that ended up just basically like, yep, we're going to kill this guy. and it's not like they like they keep on stabbing him. They just hit him once with the flagpole through the chest. He drops down, and then they trample him as they enter the room, and
To be
it's
sorry,
it's
but
just
to be
ridiculous.
fair, my memory of this was it wasn't even clear if they meant to kill him. It was just sort of like it just happened. Like everything just
Yeah.
happened so fast. The doors flew open. He's like, "Hello, my fellow citizens. I blah," and then he dies. Like, but
Yeah,
and
well, basically,
so,
like it's implied that this character named Don't Tread on Me, who's a radical, is the one that like steps on him and then pulls his flag.
Because that's his shirt. That's his shirt. Sorry,
That's his
just to
shirt.
clarify, that's his shirt. Yeah.
So the irony is that the guy that says "Don't tread on me" is treading on a politician, and then he removes the flag from from Ted's chest, and then continues into the hall, the house gallery, and they're all chanting "Our House" and various things, but the punchline to this is that the reason Sydney convinced Lila to have Ted do this is so that it buys Sydney and Lila time to get away. And it's like, okay, so Sydney used her friend and also technically like, politician on the opposite side of the aisle as bait and a distraction, or as
and Layla didn't realize that's what she was being used
no,
for to go talk
exactly.
to, right?
And Layla was freaked out by that because even though she hates Ted, she's like, that was not right.
Yeah, but it shows you the diabolicalness, is that a word, of Sydney, and it shows. But I'll just fall back on the dumbest thing was just that Layla. First of all, no, the first thing that was so stupid was what a pussy this guy was, right? Like seriously, the way he wrote him was just such a it was just so terrible.
Yeah, but a lot of politicians are like that. That's the thing, right? They're more talk than action.
Yeah, but then we have the girl boss Layla. Our protagonist walks over and she's so easily convinced this. If he's that scared, she's not going to convince him of crap. If he's going to be scared, he's going to be scared. And so that whole thing just felt so off to me. It was just gross. I hated reading it. It was dumb. But anyway, so the distraction kind of works. Their little pack runs out. And then this is the part I was getting at earlier, is the most cliche place to hide, which was a closet. And I get it. Like it's
janitorial closet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're in there and they're trying to figure out what to do next.
They are. And they realize that everyone in that room, except for Layla, would never blend in with the mob. Which kind of it shows something kind of interesting about their perspective of people. But the mob passes by, and then we find out, it's 30 pages. We're 30 pages into the script. We find out that Sydney has been invited to the most important luncheon ever that she was going to bring Layla to, which is called the Melon Camp. And the Melon Camp is basically this kind of secret society where the heads of state, like the true leaders, essentially, meet to conduct business. And Sydney was invited, and this thing never changes location, never gets canceled. She explains how, it's when they use the United States Postal Service rules, like no, between rain, sleet, or snow, it didn't stop. They still held their meeting during the Cuban Missile Crisis. They still held their meeting during 9/11. This riot at the Capitol is not going to cause them to cancel, so they have to go there. Right. And everyone else is like, no, we need to get out of here. And she says, too bad, this is where we're going. And she basically, I don't even understand how she really does it to get everybody on board to go with her for this. It's just like they just capitulate for the sake of it, which is weird because there's no real solid argument. Other than the fact of Sydney constantly saying it's where I need to be, it's where we all need to be, and I guess the closest thing she says is that it's probably going to be the safest place right now because no matter what, they're never going to let these rioters get close to these people. And I'm like, that's okay of a logical agreement, but it just feels so thin.
Yeah, she kind of talked him into it. I'm just glancing through it as you're talking, and ultimately, because they're all hesitant, and she talked him into it by basically saying it's going to be the safest place to be right now, period, because of the uppity ups that are there. So that finally tips them over the edge, and they're like, all right, well, okay, this is our best bet. Let's go. But she didn't even pitch Layla. Like, Layla needs to be there too. No, it was just like, I need to be there. It's the first time I've been invited, and it's going to be the safest place, so let's go. And then somewhere in here, the other two or three people jump in the closet with them, right?
Yeah, well, no, they're already in the closet at this point, and now it's like now we just have to get out of the closet and get across the way to the Library of Congress itself, because that's where the luncheon's supposed to be held. So that's their goal.
Yeah.
As they're doing that, we get described now. We get Molly, so this is where Molly gets her name proper and her age, and then she ends up finding this kid who's like 19, who's kind of freaking out.
Hit pause just to clarify for the audience. So at this point, we cut away from the closet. We cut to the rebels in the gallery that have taken over. Yeah. So now we're finally getting some screen time of like who's behind or who's leading the rebels.
Right, and it's not Molly. She's just there for support. She's looking out for this kid who names himself Alec Ander.
Yeah, in a unprepared fit. They're like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "Alec
Ander."
Yeah, so now he has to stick with that because that's his fake name, and we're like, okay.
And nobody believes him on that, which is fine. And then we get introduced to like the leader of this thing. His name is Jamie, and he's wearing a Davy Crockett outfit.
Of course, and he's a big dum-dum, of course.
He's an idiot, but he's a high level conspiracy theorist. And he only has one line that's actually kind of funny, where they're looking for something, and Molly's like, well, there's no proof, and he's like, exactly, but that's proof that proof exists. And it's like, no, that's funny, but because a conspiracy crazy nut job would say that, but it's like it's we need more of that. But basically he's this guy who he found this painting of a bunch of people in red shoes, and he believes it's some type of human trafficking thing. It's part of deep state. And
he found it in what he described a high government official's home, right?
High government official's home, and he's not revealing who the name of that is, which basically makes me wonder if he's not the spy in this case.
And the way he described it, I'll just do one line from Jamie. Can I read one line?
Sure, go ahead.
He's talking to Alec Ander. He's like about the tunnels, and he says, tunnels, burial pits, satanic churches, blood sacrifice. I'm talking about the vast network of elites that sacrifice the young and drink their blood while they plot the downfall of Western civilization. I'm talking about the largest human trafficking network ever conceived, right under our noses. Now, here's the problem with this is, with all the conspiracy theories that have been slowly being proven true over the last 5 years, I'm like, where's this going? Where's this script going? And we'll get there. But
I would have preferred this if it was far more unbelievable, because that's what we want to do with
aliens and stuff.
Like,
right?
It's like aliens, it's lizard people, it's volcanic people, like it's geothermal power plants that are actually causing real climate change, because climate change is real. Like he says all these things, and he says these are the source of it. It's not that. Like, you got to go so far that we understand this person is nuts. And then when you get towards the end and you realize that one of the things that he said was actually true, that is your breaking point, your catharsis, where you're like, oh my God, that's funny. Like out of all the crazy things, he got one right.
Yes, and I'm with you. That would be. It's kind of reminiscent of the one. Remember the original Independence Day? Well, in my opinion, the only Independence Day movie.
Yeah.
And there was the weird conspiracy theorist dude played by
Judd Hirsch.
Gosh, what's that? Yes, and it was funny, right? Because it was like, I told you the aliens were real. It's kind of like that.
You're talking about you're talking about Randy Quaid. Like Judd Hirsch has the same thing. He knows the same conspiracy, but Randy Quaid's the guy that was abducted by aliens who nobody believes.
That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, Dennis Quaid. It's Dennis Quaid's little brother, right?
I don't know what the order of age is between those two men. They don't look like they're relatives though.
Because he's at one point in the movie, he gets to fly one of the ships, right? And
he flies one of the jets.
Yeah. So anyway, that type of a moment in this would have been hilarious. Would have been great, right? Like, the crazy guy finally gets it right.
Yeah.
But that was another stumble of many in this script where I just felt like, ugh, what are we doing?
Well, now like the script has shifted gears where now the plot is actually like razor thin, where it's just Sydney and Layla have to get to this location so that they can meet this luncheon. At the same time, Jamie is ordering Alec Ander and everybody else to go find hidden passages and tunnels and all that type of stuff. And Alec Ander has this one scene where he's like in a congressman's office and he's like pulling up books and stuff, and he sees a bust of a politician and he flips it over to try and see if there's like a switch or something, but he ends up just knocking it off the table and it drops and shatters. I'm like, that could be played funny for a good physical comedian. but it just it's too restrictive in the absurdity for it, because this has to be the contrast when you're dealing something of this nature, especially in the concept of, okay, you've got politicians which are constantly lying and motivated by self-interest versus a crazy group of conspiracy theorists who believe in something that is too hard to understand or fathom, getting control of property and trying to expose the truth, but humiliating themselves every time every effort they make backfires. And when you don't have those two things butting against each other at their fullest, you end up getting a very kind of dull execution of it. And that's what we have. Sadly, that's what we have here. It's quite dull. Because
that's a good explanation.
Because your whole idea is it's supposed to be two antagonistic groups with the main character caught in the middle, trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. And Layla does end up getting her world shattered, because the people she thought she hated, she still hates, but the people she thought she liked, she now really hates, and she realized there's no difference between them. And that's part of her arc. And
which I think might be the ultimate message of this story, of the script, but it just doesn't hit you in the face hard enough with it, right? Like, it's just halfway.
Well, it doesn't explore it. It's basically it's like, oh, I'm scraping the surface of this idea, and it's like, well, why don't you break ground a little more, mine it for what you can, and find all the juicy, valuable bits and put that front and center, as opposed to all the dirt that you'd have to clear out to get to those bits. Because that's kind of what it is oh, okay, we have this crazy leader who, he's not charismatic, which is unfortunate, because if he was, you then understand why people would be following him. And the conspiracies that he have are not too out of this world to not think that there's something to them.
That they're based in truth, yeah.
Or at least at the very, like, because again, these types of conspiracies, there are some that are on a massive level that you don't really know of, but there's also things that have been uncovered, especially in the last 40 years, of smaller operations, like tiny things. It's like, okay, it's too real to be used for someone that you're trying to make an eccentric nut job on a crusade. So you have to make the thing that they believe in as crazy as their attitude, as their attitude, so it justifies the relationship. And this part here doesn't quite justify it. It's just like, oh, okay, so it's satanic churches and blood sacrifices. All right, so what is that? Alex Jones on Tuesdays and Thursdays, what he talks about? Like, it's not the same.
I'm sitting here, you're talking more about it, and I'm analyzing how I feel about this at different parts of it. And I think it feels like it's so hard to put into words. I feel like this is one of those storyboarding type situations that Disney does now. It feels like there's all these different pieces on the table. And instead of having a concept of a story, and then you figure out, I always like to figure out my ending first, and then I write my way to the ending. Okay. This feels like, hey, I have these core concepts I want to put together into a film. Let's mash them together and figure out how to put all the bits together. That's what this feels like. And because of that, it doesn't feel cohesive. It doesn't feel like the pacing's good. It doesn't feel like the message is on point. It just doesn't feel like the ambiance is even right in certain places. I don't know how to describe it, but that's the best as I can do. It just doesn't feel like it flows. It just doesn't feel like
there's a lot of stopping for the momentum of the script. For one part is we have this character named Henry, who's the son of Ted. And Henry is just the child of a politician. He's always been a child of a politician. He tries to seduce Layla, doesn't work. And the script stops when they encounter him at this underground tram. And he then insists, instead of going to the bunker that he was originally going to go to, he then insists to stick around with Sydney, and she's like, no, go to the bunker, it's safer there. And then for whatever reason, Layla's like, no, he should come with us. And it's like, that's weird, because why would you want to take the person who kind of, was making a bad effort of seducing you, and is kind of skeevy and is the son of a politician you hate, when you should just be no, it's a good idea for you to go. If you know where there's safety, you should go to safety and get out of our way. That would be the better argument, less people to pay attention to.
And on top of all that, she just saw his dad get murdered.
Exactly.
Right?
And
It's awkward at every level. It's like, why is she like, oh, well, come with us? And then I'm like, well, she's a good person. She wants him to be safe. So okay,
and she
that to me was like, it makes Layla's like credibility as a good human being still like it adds one more brick to
it
that wall for
would,
me.
except later she's like, maybe he can be an asset. And I'm like, well, now she's looking at him to manipulate him. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be better if Sydney said that as opposed to Layla? Like, it feels
true.
like the characters flipped here. And that's not
that's
good.
No,
Because
that's
Sydney's
I
like,
didn't
oh,
notice
it's
that,
my
yeah.
friend's son. I should take care of him. I'm not going to tell him that his dad's dead, but I should take care of him because he doesn't know what's going on here. And Layla should be like, no, if he knows how to go someplace safe, he should go there. In fact, the rest of us should go there. You go to your stupid luncheon and let us go to the thing. Like, that's the fight you want to have.
Yeah, that,
in
and that would be
this.
logically that makes way more sense too.
It was more
Like, what does-
consistent with the character of Layla up until this point, especially even with Ariana too, because Ariana should also be the one's like, yeah, I've known Henry for years. We know the way. Let's go there. And then they split up security. Damien goes with Sydney, and Robbie goes with the kids, and then you split up your team so that you can actually play out a little bit more of that story. But in this case here, it's a convoluted way to just keep Henry with them. And he doesn't really do anything for the rest of the script.
No, everything.
So he's just an
happens to
extra
him.
voice. And it's like,
Well, no, the one thing he does do is he causes the car crash. So he does
Right.
do something.
he causes the car crash, which happens because it happened. It actually didn't
And
do
and
anything.
and I don't know if it's irony. I don't want to misuse irony. It gets misused all the time. But he causes the accident after he changes his mind and he's like, I don't want to be with you guys. I don't trust you guys. I don't know you guys. See you later. And he has like this
Yeah.
panic moment. And so it's like, so he joins the group just to cause the car crash. That's really it.
Yes. And the thing is, the car crash served no purpose because, like,
It got him caught. It got them caught by the rebels. So I guess that would be
yeah,
the
but then
purpose.
they get away, and then they still get to the new location. It was really just padding out the script because we get this one scene where we get Bruno, who is the double crossing, politician, and Molly's interrogating him, not getting anywhere. Jamie comes in,
Oh, I forgot about this. Yeah.
and he's just asking him, is like, I want to know. Like, Bruno thinks this is all about the pipeline. Jamie's like, no. It's like, Jamie then says, have you ever heard of the Red Shoe Society? And this is where we figure out what it is. And this is what the the whole thing that Sydney's going after is it's this Red Shoe Society. It's about this painting. Bruno has no clue what it is. And then there's this talk about, like, why is America the greatest country in the world? And it's like, and then Bruno is trying to, like, outwit him, saying, if that's all true and you're saying this is going on, then it can't be. And Jamie's like, well, two things can be true at once, and you
Yeah,
just
he's like,
got to
why don't you
understand
just
it's
leave
not
the
about
country?
facts and reasons, it's about feelings. So this is where we
Yes.
get into this is the fact where this is where the writer is trying to say it's not 100% political of this side. He's trying to say that this is a crazy group that doesn't care about the facts, cares about the feelings. Well, that's really associated to this one other area. And he's bleeding these two together. That's what he's kind of doing.
This is one of the few things I highlighted. That line pissed me off. Two things can be true, Diaz. You got to understand this is not about facts and reason. It's about feeling. And I'm like, this is the biggest freaking gaslighting ever, dude. This is such a bullshit thing. Sorry, but this really pisses me off because there's one side of the politics, we're not go down that road too far, that does a lot more with feelings than it does with facts. And it's not these MAGA people. And so that really pissed me off. I'm like, this is the exact opposite. This is like murdering someone as while you're stabbing them. You look at someone else and be like, why are you stabbing them? Why are you stabbing this person as you're doing the stabbing? So that kind of pissed me off. But Bruno, this part gets really savage because then what does Jamie do, right? When he doesn't get the answers he wants, what does Jamie do to this guy?
He pours boiling hot coffee down his throat.
Yes, savage. Like that was hard to read. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh. So that shows us Jamie's commitment to, like, getting to the truth of his conspiracy theory, right?
True,
This
but
Red
the other
Shoe
thing you also
Society.
have to note is that there is a mix in this group. Like, the writer does specifically call them radicals. He doesn't call them MAGA or anything of that nature.
Right. Nothing on the nose that much.
The other part too is, like, there's there's room on both sides because, I mean, from the perspective, like, you have the Summer of Love and then you got January 6th, right? Two different people, or two different political ideologies. one far more damaging than the other, and then the other, the damage and the source of those damages is very suspicious, right? There's still investigations going on. Nobody knows the truth or the reality of it. We do know that there's far more innocent people visiting the Capitol than there were wanting to cause any damage or harm.
Yeah.
And the inverse would be with regards to the Summer of Love. And all this stuff is still coming out at the time of this recording. So this guy here, he's trying to play both sides. He's not doing a very good job at it.
Yeah, and I felt like I think Jamie as the bad guy, like you kind of nailed it. Where you're like, yeah, we don't really see his motive. He's not very charismatic. How is he the leader? Mm-hmm. He's a very, very, very cookie cutter, like just bad guy. Kind of very boring, very bland, very forgettable. And because of that, it just there's his whole plot line that doesn't carry much weight. And so again, this was just more painful stuff to just kind of slog.
And there's nothing personal in it for Jamie either. Like it's because again, he's saying it's about feelings, right? Well, what's the feeling of upset that you have?
Yeah, if
right?
it was like, hey, I know they kidnapped my daughter when she was 9 years old, and I know they've got her somewhere. They ruined, it ruined my entire life, and we get just a glimpse of his backstory. And so he's been on this mission his whole life to uncover these people that kidnapped his daughter. At least that'd be something. It could be that way,
or it just could be something like completely nuts, like how his sister went missing, and when she came back, she looked 40 years older than she actually was, and instead of it just being like, no, his family said, yeah, your sister has this gland disorder where it causes her to, age faster. We put her into the hospital for treatment, didn't work. She came back, but he was a toddler, and he thought, no, the government sucked her dry of her adrenochrome or something, and that's
took her life source.
Yeah, it took her life force or something, and that's what stimulated. Like Jamie's this dumb kid who didn't understand the complications of adolescence and young adulthood, and now it's like completely shaped his entire narrative, and that's what he's doing here. That because again, this is supposed to be a comedy. It's not very funny. It only has a couple of funny moments to it, but when you're dealing
wait. You're saying this is supposed to be a comedy? I thought it wasn't, and we were just.
Oh no, this is clearly supposed to be a comedy. Yeah.
You think it was really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't get that vibe at all. I thought this was supposed to be like a what are all those movies where one day a year you get to like kill them,
The Purge?
You want to? Yeah, this felt like a mini Purge to me. That's the whole vibe I got off this. Well, not that this is definitely supposed to be a comedy.
No, it's definitely a comedy because the character of Robbie is supposed to be a comedic character. He's not very good. You have the one character that doesn't say anything because he went through something trauma, and all of his actions and stuff are kind of denoting like he's this silent badass dude. And then you've got Sydney, who is this very blatant hypocrite. And then you've got her daughter, Ariana, who is this peppy, bubbly girl that is always encouraging and helpful all the time, even in the face of crazy stuff going on around them. And then you also have this one, it's not a good joke at all, where Robbie's talking about how we need help from like Blackwater, and Layla's like, why would you what's wrong? Like Blackwater, really? He's like, yeah, what's wrong with them? She's like, they kill indiscriminately. And he's like, well, so does the American military. And she's like, good point. It's like, that's supposed to be a joke. It's not a very good joke.
I thought it was a valid point. I didn't take that as a joke. I'm like, so that's what I mean. If this was supposed to be funny, this is a horrible script. Then.
Oh, it is a horrible comedy.
This makes it even worse than what I thought, because I read this as a serious script that was like I said, like a little mini Purge. Mm-hmm. And I mean that very loosely. Like it's about this riot and these people are trying to survive. So yeah, it's kind of like a Purge. But no, not a comedy at all. Does it have a few jokes here and there? Sure, but almost any horror film even has some jokes in it here and there, some dark humor or whatever.
I mean, if you're talking like a B or C level horror film, like something that Troma would make, this would fit into Troma, but Troma would still be funnier. There's also this scene that Henry has with Robbie, where like Henry's talking about how he was in like the Persian Gulf, I think vacationing or something, and then a sea otter came after him, and then he calls it a marmot or a fish, and then Robbie's like, but you said it was an otter. He's like, otters, marmots, they're interchangeable. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah, was that Henry's story? I can't remember.
That's part of Henry's story, and it also feeds into what Robbie is, where Robbie will make a statement. He'll make something that's like kind of true, but then when you drill deeper, he doesn't know anything more than that. He just knows the superficial level because, again, in the politics, it's all about the superficial, what you can say to your constituents, to rally them behind you, to maintain your
and then when you get
position.
Yeah, and then when you get confronted or painted a corner, you just change topics.
Exactly. And that's
it.
what Robbie
But
does constantly. And then
right. But I would say that's a comedy. I'd say that's just the truth of a lot of politicians, a lot of people in Hollywood, or sorry, in DC, which about the same thing.
primarily, I mean, there's not much difference in
Not
that
much
regard.
difference there, yeah.
But like the thing is that when you do that, I mean, for the average person here, they would recognize that exchange as, oh, this is making fun of politicians, cool or bad or boring or whatever.
See, and I don't. That's not my take. My take is this is an accurate, a capturing of most politicians. So, anyway, but yeah, I mean, if you're saying this was supposed to be a comedy, then I don't know what's worse than a red light, but I don't want to get to the end. But yeah, so what's next? Let's get back to the story. So what happens next? Where were we? We kind of went.
Well, you got this debate between Sydney and Lila while they're like making their way through the Capitol of telling Henry that his dad's dead, and it really just meanders. It sadly really does. There's nothing really going on about.
Because I just read this today, and I'm already like in my brain. I'm already at the part where they're in the RV. Right, they're in Walter White's RV is kind of how I imagined it, but we're technically not even there yet, right? So do we get past the car crash, or did we go back?
We haven't gotten to the car crash yet because they finally get to the Library of Congress where the luncheon is supposed to be,
thing,
and nobody's there, but there is a menu, and on it has A-C written there, and they're trying to figure out what A-C means.
So now the movie is transitioned to National Treasure. Yes, let's go.
Pretty much, yeah. And they go through a bunch of like scenarios of what it could actually be, and eventually Sydney realizes, oh, it's Arlington Cemetery.
It was air conditioning, for the record.
Like, yeah, they thought it was like air conditioning or something else.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. So I guess there we go. There's the comedy peeking out a little bit, peeking at you. Yeah, and then they decide, okay, that's where we got to go. But because they went through a tunnel to get over to the library, and now there's no tunnels because they have to go across the river to get over to the cemetery.
Right.
So at this point, they kind of like skip over it, but they get a car somewhere, right?
Yeah, they get a car, and that's where we were talking earlier, where Henry's getting all upset that he wants out of this car.
He panics.
He's like grabs the wheel, and then they all crash. And he goes through the windshield and lands inside the pond. Yeah. And here's something that's also funny: the radicals come by with a first aid kit to help. So
yeah, and
they don't try to kill or hurt him; they try to help him. And then at the same time, Jamie with some of his men come in and kidnap the rest
with some guns while they're listening to some. I believe it was Luke Bryan, country artist.
Probably.
That was weird. That was very. That was clearly written in the script too. We got Luke Bryan out there. We're not calling him MAGA, but they're listening to Luke Bryan. So let's keep going.
Pretty much. We're basically this is where Jamie starts getting into the serious mode thing, where he's trying to get exposure as to what is, where's the Red Shoe Society.
So we lock them in the RV. We lock them all in the RV, right? That's their prison.
Sydney's in his chair, and all the others are facing the ground, like they're on their stomachs, and Jamie's basically has a gun and he's putting it by each of their heads, and he's saying, you're going to tell me what I want, and if you don't, one of these people will die. And Sydney's not budging until
he shoots the floor. He
shoots the floor
next to one of their heads. Like, he actually fires his gun, and Sydney's all like playing it cool. She's like, she's not going to give him nothing because she's a big, strong woman.
And then Jamie holds the gun onto Ariana's head, and he's counting down. And then Lila is the one that calls it Mellencamp and saves her life.
Yeah, he gets to like one. Her own mother doesn't do anything, but Layla does finally give in and say I always think of John Cougar, but Mellencamp. Like they're going to go to Mellencamp. So there we go, seeing Layla stepping up, right, being a good human being, and it shows how crappy Sydney is. Sydney's like, nope, not gonna save my own kid.
Sydney was like calling his bluff, and she's like, now you just made it harder for all of us because he's gonna know that we're gonna capitulate as long as he just pulls a gun to that woman's head. And it's like, we don't know if that's true or not at this point, because he hasn't physically hasn't really harmed anyone yet.
Is that a well, I mean, he poured boiling water down,
but they didn't see that, right? So they don't know.
Oh, they didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
but we saw that. But what I was going to say, I just lost my train of thought. That image of the boiling hot water just told you that's just brutal. That just throws my brain. But oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. But she's, as a mother, are you going to take that risk? Are you going to be like, I'm going to call his bluff and I'm going to use my daughter as the her life is what hangs in the balance, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. And it just showed how crappy of a human being and a politician she is too, though.
Yes,
right? The fact that she's gonna let that happen to her kid. I'm like, yeah, she's horrible. Sydney's horrible. I hate Sydney. We should hate Sydney.
Yes.
Honestly, I hate almost everyone in this script except for Layla, and I'm not sure if that's what the writer was going for, but I hate pretty much everyone. and I don't want to watch a show where I hate pretty much everyone. Like, ugh. That's how I felt about, well, I'm not going to go down that road, but there's several shows that are out now that have a lot of people kind of like and give a pass to. And I'm like, no, I hate everyone. Where's our heroes? Bring back our good heroes. I'm sick of anti-heroes. I'm sick of having two villains.
Fighting over who's the least worst. Yeah.
looking at You Penguin, which was a good show, but still, I felt like I need to take a shower after every episode because everyone was horrible pieces of shit. I hated everybody. They're all terrible. And I'm like, ugh. It's a show about the Penguin, I get it, but we should have had some more like good people. And in fact, the only good person we had in Penguin, I don't want to spoil it, but has a very terrible ending in the last episode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this show is just terrible. Like I felt so depressed after watching that. And so with this script, I felt like, yeah, I don't like anybody except for Layla. And I know we don't want to do spoilers. I know you're gonna tell us where we want to stop, but I hated the ending for Layla's character too, because I'm like, this doesn't even fit. This is the exact opposite of where she should have been after what she just went through. So I didn't like that. Was another thing that felt really off to me. But back to this. Yes, Jamie's trying to get information out of Sydney. Sydney's a piece of crap and was going to let her daughter get shot in the face, or at least risk it for the biscuit before.
Risk it all to preserve Mellencamp so that she could go. It's so. I mean, it's
Yes,
very telling of her character. It's a good beat in that regard. And it is also consistent with Sydney from her introduction, where she literally does only care about the power.
Yeah, and the subtle beat with that was also, it shows you really how important Mellencamp is to her, and it should make you wonder why. Why is this luncheon that big a deal? And so that was my first inkling. I'm like, there's more to this Mellencamp than what's on the surface. So that was, to me, that was foreshadowing. That was like, if you're paying attention, there's foreshadowing just in that situation, how she was willing to risk her daughter's life to get to this, or to not give up this meeting. So that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, and even Ariana, who is like really upset that her mom would do that, she's like, to heck with her. I don't even know that person anymore. I want to get out of here. And Layla's like trying to say, well, maybe she loves you. She's like, no, she loves you, Layla. She loves you because, I don't know, what's so great about you. And I like the line response to that. Like, Layla takes no offense to Ariana asking what's so great about her. I mean, and that's kind of shows like, yeah, it's not important to her that her mom likes her. She's absolutely right. She should be liking you. And
it's
like,
she's
oh,
different, which is a healthy response. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's normal. Oh, good. You have that one gleaming good point raised here. And then Alexander shows up, and it's revealed that he's obviously not Alexander. He's Carter, Layla's boyfriend.
Dun dun dun.
And the thing is, he's not there for the riot. He was there for under the same foolish guise that the media and the politicians said, which is like for the protest of the oil thing. Like he's not the crazy that's there, but he's been now pulled into it because if he refuted them, he probably would be, on the run, being assaulted or whatever. Yeah.
I just realized this. There's some irony there because the funeral is supposed to be in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Like the heartland of oil in America, and yet he's not there for the oil thing. So yeah, I see that thread line now. I didn't notice that before, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, like
good joke.
When the pipeline is canceled, he's like, well, that's not great for oil and industry and his family and whatnot. So he decided, I'm gonna that's how the context is that he's trying to say that he's there for, to protest proper. And he got yanked into a riot.
Okay, but look, from a writing standpoint, from a plotting standpoint,
right?
This doesn't make any sense because in real life, if these were real people and their boyfriend and girlfriend, she's going to DC for this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to be there. He wants to be there too to defend the oil thing or whatever he's there for, right?
Yeah.
You're both going to DC, and your boyfriend girlfriend go together, right? So
should be.
So are we supposed to be like he had this deep hidden guilt from his girlfriend? He's like, I don't want her to know that I'm pro oil. And so he had to hide it from her by pretending that his grandma died or his aunt died or
His aunt
whatever,
died.
and that
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
in Texas. Like that doesn't make any. It's like the only reason that that's in the script was for this reveal to happen. But da da da, here he is. He's actually this guy that you thought he was someone else, and it's really her boyfriend, and he's right here. That's dumb. That's just dumb script. It's dumb to me. I don't like that at all.
It's the fact of the matter is that it's a rushed conflict in the relationship. Like it's different where you've got two people of different political ideologies that are in a relationship with each other. There's something else there that's beyond politics, and yet when she's going to Congress, for this contest that she's won, and he's going to be there protesting against against something that she doesn't like. He's doing that in secret to not exacerbate a situation, and then this third party has basically compelled them to get together and deal with this aspect. If this were a proper romantic comedy, that would be the foundation, the spine of your story, is the fact that he's just like, yep, I love this girl, I'm proud of her, she's going there, I would go with her, but I can't because I think it's very wrong that this stupid politician from New York is gonna do something that's gonna risk my family's livelihood.
Yeah, but you could do that so many different ways.
Yeah.
You could just have them like both go to DC together, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go see my cousin Eric, who is over here, and he's doing some, he works for this construction company or whatever. I'm gonna go do. I'm sure they've got a Six Flags or something up there. But why not just have them go together, right? And
Well,
then
if you have them
just
go
shows up to
together, he
save her.
can't leave her side because he has to be the supportive boyfriend, right?
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't affect the plot really that much anyway. Like just have them go
No.
together, and then you still have a reveal where she's like, "You're here protesting," and he's all bashful. He's like, "Well, I knew you wouldn't approve, and I really think you're hot. So sorry, baby, but I got to do what I got to do." Like it still would have carried just as much of an impact as this. Like anyway, I know this is a dumb little thing, but I'm like, yeah. So the whole thing, like I'm in Texas at a fake funeral, was stupid. It was just dumb. Like I felt like it was just there to surprise us and go, oh, this other person we thought was this other character is actually her boyfriend, and it just felt very weak.
Oh no,
weak and
that's
forced.
that's the very thin aspect of what it is, because even his excuse is he's just angry. Like that's why he's there. He's just angry. It's like we want some substance. You need some substance in something like this.
And we revisited that line, right? The angry concept a couple times in the script, where basically everyone's angry on both sides. Like everyone's angry, everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, at least that's fair. Like everyone is angry, right? So anyway, the Layla gives up what they're doing, where they're going. Sydney's not happy about it at all. And then we have what's his name, Carter, kind of meet him, but that was so weird too. That felt where they two, Layla and Ariana, get out, and then remember that he describes the guards like they look back, and by the time they look back, nothing was happening. That was a really weird line. I'm like,
some of the geography in this script doesn't line up. And
so I'm like, so did they? It was dark. They were distracted. The two girls literally walked out of the door of the RV and walked out of line of sight before the guards turned around.
Yeah,
and
apparently
so they didn't even care. Is that what happened? Because it was just, that felt very weird to me. I'm like, maybe he just missed that in a rewrite. He was gonna like make that more clear, but that was kind of like weird, as kind of discombobulated. And then, anyway, so she figures out Carter is, and then how did Carter exit the scene? I don't remember. Like, oh yeah, Jamie came in, and he's like, oh yeah, he had to fake who he was, and then he leaves, only to create a distraction by blowing up some barbecue grills, right?
Yeah.
That was
Basically,
the
he
next
left and he blew up some barbecue grills, which saved Lila's life, because Jamie was like strangling her under a pond, and then Ariana somehow got a gun and then shot Jamie.
This whole thing, they go to the water, and Jamie's like, I don't need you guys anymore, so he's gonna kill the two girls.
Mm-hmm.
And then just as he's drowning the one, that's when one of the barbecues explodes, and we find out that's Carter. And I'm like, well, dude, if you would have been a good girl or a good boyfriend, you should have just like been peeking out of the bushes, making sure she was safe the whole time, not running off, because she almost got drowned or got drowned. What's the proper grammar there?
She almost drowned. Yeah.
She almost drowned. Yeah, she was drowned by a murderer, and so Jamie gets shot, right?
Jamie gets
Ariana,
got, and Carter
Ariana
has
picked up the gun.
Yeah, Carter has a speech where he's basically saying like Jamie's the type of guy that would take advantage of that, using it to build a new system with him at the top instead of like democracy, which is not incorrect because Jamie does have other motives that just don't quite line up.
Yeah, but this felt weird. This speech from the bed of a pickup truck at this moment in time was just dumb. It was another dumb thing.
Well,
It doesn't
it's
feel
a
right
dumb
at
thing
all.
because it goes into like an idiocracy moment where he's now talking to the rest of the crowd. He's just saying like, if we want to build a new world, we have to start again and again, or whatever. And then the "Don't tread on me" guy's like, "What do you suggest we do?" And Carter's like, burn it down." And then he's like, "I mean, burn it down." And then they go, "Yeah." And it's like, okay, now you've got
Yeah.
the silliness.
Yeah.
Like this is where you get into the absurdity of the
But
the attempt
this
at
is
comedy
moments.
that they're trying to do here.
But again, this is moments after that serious situation where
Yeah.
Jamie gets shot because he's drowning Layla.
Yep.
And then Ariana picks up the gun, shoots him in the shoulder, so it stops him from drowning her. Sydney shows up behind her daughter and was like, "Do it, kill him, do it, pull the trigger." Ariana can't do it. Sydney takes the gun from his hand and then shoots Jamie in the head and just kills him dead right there. And then we cut to Carter doing his little speech thing. And so I'm like, again, we go from the serious, like, oh my God, we almost died moment. And then we see how brutal Sydney can be. She's not only this ruthless politician, she's like willing to just shoot someone and not even bat an eye. And at the same moment be disappointed that her daughter wouldn't also do the same thing. Like this is a whole level of like ice cold, right?
Yeah.
And then we go to this speech, which felt so stupid again. It was just like, what? Dude, like, oh, let's have a little speech now, like, no, like, what are we doing here? What is this? And so then they take off, right? Oh no, then can I say, or do you want to say? I don't do too much. So Sydney takes Ariana, shoves her back in the RV, keeps Layla, and then shoves one of the crutches for who was on crutches. I'm confused.
I can't remember who was on crutches. Someone was on crutches, and then she basically locks him in the RV, where Sydney takes Layla into a canoe
at gunpoint,
and forces Layla to row themselves across
slave row
across the water to the Arlington Memorial Bridge by the river on the river.
In the dark, like I'm picturing this whole thing, right? Like,
yeah.
What? This is just crazy. They get almost to the end. Layla, this was another weird little detail that I didn't think added anything at all. Layla's like
exhausted.
Layla's like they're like 20 feet from the edge of the other bank, and Layla can't row anymore. And then Sydney's like, get us there. And she's like, I can't, I'm tired. So Sydney jumps out, swims the rest of the way. And then Layla looks down river like, oh, I could get away. And then Sydney shoots the boat.
Yeah, so it starts to sink. And she's like,
starts to
swim
sink.
over.
It was like, and then she's like, well, let's go. You can't get away now. And I'm like, well, first of all, I wouldn't sink that fast, but it was sort of this funny, weird moment. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You could have just gotten out of the boat. It didn't really add that much to it.
Yeah.
And then we get to she drags Layla through the trees, and then we get into the cemetery, and it's not just a cemetery. What is it, Script?
This is very close to where we have to cut it off because they're at this memorial amphitheater, which has these big neon signs that says "Welcome to Mellon Camp." So it's very obvious to like if you should be able to see this for some sort of secret society. It's quite on the radar.
Exactly what I thought, dude.
And it's like, okay. I mean, again, this goes into, why I know this is a comedy that's not very good comedy, but why this is supposed to be a comedy. But they get to Mellon Camp, and we won't go into too much detail. We'll just cover it ambiguously. Everybody's expectations of what's at Mellon Camp is not met. They're not subverted. They're just very much off course. And it does relate back to the essay that Lila wrote. And
yeah. And I would say this: we can at least describe like it was a disco party in the middle of the night, surrounded by rioters.
Yep.
Music, loud blaring, not disco, techno, music, techno party, lights, lasers, all that stuff. So just let that sink in. Like they're in the middle of the riot, in the middle of the night, and these guys are just having a party. They're not, but they're still secret. Shh. Nobody knows we're here.
They're still secret.
That was so stupid. At least put it underground. Like, come on, dude. That was so dumb.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this is a very thin script. I mean, I will say this thing: it's got a very simple plot, easy to follow. Get to Mellon Camp. I'm down with that. That's cool. Yeah. The characters, though, are also sadly pretty simple themselves. They're not complex. They're not interesting. As I said earlier in the show, I was falling asleep reading this. Like, it's hard for me to fall asleep when I'm reading because I'm actively doing something. It's easy to like fall asleep listening to music or fall asleep watching a boring TV show. It's hard for me to fall asleep while reading. I was getting drowsy. I was like, I might have to take a nap after this. and it's I will say this, I didn't pick up many spelling mistakes as a compliment to the writer.
Yeah, I didn't either. I think I saw one like missing comma in one spot that I noticed, but that's nothing. So yeah, I mean, it was proofed very well. It's just, I think the core concept here is okay. I don't think it's great. I think it's okay, but this could definitely do with a couple more rewrites to get it polished up. Would I don't know.
I think the synergy of a conspiracy theorist having that one crazy conspiracy be true and having that being a motivational aspect for the politician and they cross over, that should be leading to good comedy. But
but to make that more interesting, you could have made that character actually be her boyfriend. Like she had no idea, and then that would make the twist at the very end even better. That
maybe, yeah.
You know what I'm saying about who her, I don't want to say too much, but you know what I mean? That twist at the end where it turns out that they were polar opposites and the person he was looking for the whole time was like his own girlfriend. Dude, that would have been hilarious. And but really make it a comedy. Like make it the level of like God, I don't know, Clue, the movie, or what's a good example? What's a good sort of like action-y that's a good comedy? Like
an action, well, maybe like Naked Gun has action and comedy.
Yeah, something like that. Not something that's super action movie, because this isn't really an action, but you know what I'm
like
saying.
This one needs the tone of like Idiocracy, but you pull back the stupid just enough so that you're making fun of the systems.
You know what? Burn While Reading. Was that the one with Brad Pitt?
Oh, Burn After Reading. Yes, the Coen brothers.
He gets shot in the closet and stuff. Dude, that show came out of nowhere. I've only watched it once, but I remember being like, what the crap am I watching? Because George Clooney's character and stuff. Like that level. Like if it's like that.
Like he always has to go for a run after sex and
Yeah. So like let's like that. If it's very like, hey, this is just crazy, random, stupid, funny, like political thing, that at the end has a twist on a secret society, like, okay, that could be fun. But this was none of that. This just didn't really deliver well in any form to me. Like I told you, I hated reading this. I really did. I didn't like it at all. And I've liked every other script, even if it was genres. Like we I've done a couple of horror ones together, which is not it's my least favorite genre. And I liked both of those. This just, there's so much about this that I didn't like, that I'm not gonna crap all over it, but I did not like this at all. I would be very interested in reading another one of his scripts to see if this was just if this was just a one-off. They're not all going to be winners, but to me this was the most painful script you made me read this year. So thanks.
Well, I mean, this guy does have some other work out there. He co-wrote a script called The Party Slasher a few years back. Looks like it's a very independent movie. So there's that if you want to take it out. So I mean, I guess it's no surprise here. Of the two choices, pass or green light. I think it's quite obvious at this point. This is a pass for both of us.
This is a shred it. This is a put it in a shredder one for me. like nope. Start over. Do better. You can do better. Because a lot of this, there's all the staples or the foundational work as a writer, I think, is here. I didn't see any major red flags for
I think the contained time frame, the location is fine. The idea of a secret meeting happening to this day and two rival parties both wanting to find it has legs to it, but again, concept is king, but execution is emperor, man. And the execution for this was really,
and you said it was where did it rank on the blacklist that year?
30. This is too high in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think 30 is too high.
This I can see why it ranked this way, because again, some of the character archetypes in there are funny from the perspective of a studio exec who knows these types, who deals with these types, who deals with the person who's like, I'm so committed to the job, yes, I will sacrifice my firstborn child to get it done. They resonate with that because they too find that to be absurd and horrifying.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, no, this just is not. It just doesn't do it for me. It's like, it's a very, very, very weak comedy. For something that's got a pretty good, like, just imagine all the funny things you could do if you wanted to parody a riot at the Capitol. Like,
Oh, yeah.
how far could you go? How crazy could it be? Wouldn't it be funny if you had two sections of the same group of people, each having a different effigy of a person that is opposite each other's political views, even though they're all the same, there for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
wait a minute,
Oh, yeah.
we're not. Are you here to protest him or her? It's like, well, we don't like them, but we agree with all the points you're doing. It's like, yeah, but we like her and we don't like him, and like, and then you have the conflict within them because it shows like, yeah, they hate all politicians, but even though they're all there to protest the same thing, they don't know which one is the responsible person for doing it until you realize, oh, wait a minute, these are those two that, you know, they walk across the aisle to work together for something that's not in the interest of the people they represent.
Yeah,
And-
or you see like you have like these two separate crowds that are divided by like, you know, a police barrier, right? And then you have like somebody up there with a megaphone kind of saying something like, or maybe somebody gets up there, a politician says something and like kind of put their minds at ease or whatever, just says something to both crowds at the same time.
Right.
And then we literally say whatever, you have to be clever with the dialogue writing, but whatever they write it in a way that both crowds like literally physically like change positions, and then they all start chanting something that was the exact opposite. Like they
Yeah.
just got talked into being on the other side. They both flipped.
And then they're both at each other's throat for the reasons that they
And like, yeah, you can have a lot of fun with that for sure. Because there's plenty of hypocrisy everywhere, and just in humanity in general. But it really comes to the surface through politics, and so yeah, that it could be fun. That's what I mean. This whole thing, to me, it's not a script. It's not a comedy script. Like I know you thought it was, but I didn't get that. But if it was specifically meant to be a comedy, this is terrible. This is not a comedy. It was not written like one to me at all. Remember when we did the one on the Heisenberg, or not the Heisenberg? Was it the Heisenberg? Yeah, with the Zeppelin, right?
Yeah, the Zeppelin one, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
That's the
one was
Hindenburg,
like,
yeah.
Sorry, thank you. I knew that wasn't right. I'm like, Heisenberg, didn't he make
Heisenberg is physics. Hindenburg is is balloons.
I know. I've been watching. You guys, guess what I've been watching lately? You know what I've been watching. So that one was funny. Like that whole thing, it just needed a little bit of polish, but that script was hilarious for a very serious topic and for a moment in history and involving, you know, the Z Germans. Like that was funny. This one wasn't even close to being funny. So yeah, this isn't a pass. This is let's forget about it and move on with our lives. You know, it's just, and I hate to say that because the writer in me that knows how hard it could be to get stuff done looks at that and goes, oh, there's a lot. There's 100 pages. There's a lot of work here. A lot of hours went into this. But we're not here to empathize with the work ethic or the amount of work involved. We're here to judge the end product. And this thing was not good script.
It is not up to my standards either. Again, don't be boring. And for me, a lot of parts of this script were boring. And the ones that were a little bit entertaining, not enough to keep me awake, sadly. Just wasn't there. But I want to do a nice little thank you to Jake of 52 Movies a Year, who did a $4.99 super chat reading Speak, Friend, and Enter Camp.
Nice.
So
nice.
So thank you very much for that. Before we wrap it up, TJ, what are your final? Are there any more thoughts you want to add on to this script before we call it? Because it's
No, buddy. Like I said, I've said it before. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Like we just need to move on. Like that's my response to that is silence. Let's just move on to the next script, please.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I had hopes that this could have been funny. I mean, the premise alone is like, oh yeah, you've got someone who's there on the most important day of their life. They're ready to do something big, and then all of a sudden there's a riot that's confounding them. And it exposes the hypocrisy of government and the Nepo babies inside the system. And but it just failed to deliver, and that's the other part too. I think this writer in general, Will, you got an idea there that has some merit to it, but I don't know if it was a rush job to get it complete, but it just didn't feel like the territory was explored at its most in order to really make this a script that stands out. And you're anyone, especially a person who's being repped by CAA. Yes, you can definitely dismiss what we say. It's fair enough. These are just our comments and thoughts. But I will say this: if you were intending this to be a comedy, it didn't hit. And if you wanted this to be a serious film, its tone and pacing did not convey that enough for me. And I've read thousands of screenplays, and I rarely do I come across one that feels different from the genre of its premise. So, with that, that's Our House.
Yep,
which,
that's it. Do you want to share with everyone your of course in vague details what you've got coming up in the real world for the next few weeks?
We're not going to be missing a show, even though I'm going to be on my way back from LA because I'm going out there to pitch. But
which is awesome. Can you tell us anything about that at all, or do you got to keep it all?
Unfortunately, I got to keep it all close to the chest. But I'm going out there, basically just reconnecting with people I haven't seen in person since the pandemic, who most of them I've been talking to, over the internet. So I'm finally able to go visit them in person without any crazy hang-ups and whatnot. But next week's show will be a better one. We're reading this script called Fistmas. That is a comedy. And it is actually funny. That's about as far as I'm going to take it there. That show will be playing. It'll be a recorded show, but it'll be playing live here next week. When it comes to this particular script, when it comes to Our House, as always, even though Mac, you weren't too thrilled with it, I would still. It still has a learning aspect to it. What you can learn from this script is that you have to maintain the core of your premise. You have to maintain the tone that you want to cover with this premise, and you also want to stick to your genre and know your genre. With this one here, we have different interpretations. I interpreted it as a comedy that failed, and you felt it was far more of a serious drama that had jokes, and that's not a good place to be with your script. You should, you're never going to please everyone, but you should be able to convey to everyone that reads the script, this is the type of script it is. And I think that there's some valid reasons here that it's not doing that. But if you are curious about it, of course, you can always reach out to me on the Twitter X's, and I can hook you up with the script. And as always, please do not try to share it or make it go viral, as you never know, this writer might be in the process of trying to get this produced or developed further for production. We want to make sure that we're showing support and we're not doing anything to circumvent those efforts. Outside of that, you can find out what scripts we will be reviewing in the future by joining the Patreon. That goes to support this show as well as other aspects of what I'm doing here. We've got next year's Blacklist is coming out in a couple of days, so I'll be reviewing those log lines and whatnot on the Patreon as well. So you'll be seeing or you'll be getting a nice taste of what scripts we'll be reviewing next year as well, because that's going to be an interesting list, because this year we've kind of got a good sense of how 2023 was kind of shifting away from certain ideologies. Here's this one script that kind of feels like it vacillates between that time period and the current era. And we'll see what next year's Blacklist has, see if it's a bit more straight away and a bit more focused on the original stories, the compelling stories, the ones that are having something to say that is not in a preachy method, but more in a raising a question and generating thought and conversation method, which is what great stories are supposed to do.
Well said, for sure.
All right. So until then, I want to wish all of you guys out there a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for listening. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.